Mary Cooper hid letters from Caltech, Princeton, and Germany universities begging to recruit her genius son, and she stuffed them in her nightstand like junk mail. Not because she thought Sheldon wasn't ready, because she couldn't handle him leaving. And that right there is the entire Mary Cooper story in one move. A woman who built her whole identity around protecting one kid, weaponizing God to do it, and burning down everyone else in the process. But here's the thing most people miss: she wasn't always like this. Not even close. And the person she became in Big Bang Theory, that's not who she started as. That's who grief and guilt turned her into. As someone who's watched both shows more times than I'd ever admit out loud and spent a genuinely embarrassing amount of time thinking about this family, I've been sitting on this for a while. Because when you actually lay out the timeline of what happens to Mary Cooper across both shows, you don't just see a strict Texas mom. You see a woman who slowly loses her mind, and the worst part is the show plays it for laughs. So let me walk you through it. Let's start with something most people completely overlook: Mary's relationship with her other two kids. Because this is where the hypocrisy gets structural, not just occasional. There's a concept called the glass child. It describes what happens to kids who grow up next to a sibling with intense special needs. The parent is so consumed by one child that they literally look through the others. That's Missy. That's her entire childhood. She even says it herself in one scene. Her dad and Georgie are a team because of football, her mom and Meemaw are a team because of Sheldon, and she's just there. Nobody's teammate, nobody's priority. And the show doesn't even frame it as sad. It just kind of sits there. And the moments where Missy does get attention, it's almost always because she did something wrong. The Professor Proton photo scene is a perfect example. Missy is clearly upset, crying, going through preteen emotional stuff, and Sheldon walks in and starts antagonizing her. He literally mocks her, saying maybe her attitude is why she has boy problems. She snaps and rips his photo. Who does Mary punish? Missy. Immediately. Doesn't ask why she was crying. Doesn't ask what Sheldon said. Doesn't care. Sheldon's property was damaged, so Missy is the villain. Every single time. And what kills me is there's this one episode, the twin study, where researchers actually show Mary proof that Missy is lonely, emotionally neglected, and suffering because of how much attention Sheldon gets. Mary sees the data, she feels guilty, she has this little moment of realization, and then nothing changes. She goes right back to the same pattern within episodes. Because being the mother of a genius gives her more psychological reward than being the mother of a happy, normal girl. That's not me being harsh. That's literally what the show demonstrates. Now, Georgie. If Missy is the invisible child, Georgie is the one they actively disrespect. Mary calls him dumb as soup. Not once, not as a joke, but as a running family fact that even Sheldon repeats to his friends in California years later. She and Meemaw treat him like he's genetically incapable of contributing anything meaningful. But the show quietly proves them wrong at every turn. Georgie has incredible emotional intelligence. He's a natural entrepreneur, he's running side businesses as a teenager, he turns a tire shop into an empire. And after George Sr. dies, Georgie is the one who holds everything together. He takes care of Missy, financially supports his grieving mother, manages a newborn, navigates a new marriage, all while still basically being a kid himself. And Mary never tells Sheldon any of this. She lets Sheldon live in California thinking his brother is some deadbeat, and she never corrects it. She actively hides Georgie's sacrifices to protect Sheldon's ego. That's not love. That's favoritism so deep it borders on cruelty. But now here's where it gets really dark, and this is the part that fundamentally changed how I see this character. Mary Cooper didn't find God through some spiritual awakening. She made a deal. During the birth of the twins, when Missy almost died, Mary panicked and promised God that if her daughter survived, she'd change her entire life. Missy lived, and Mary held up her end. She went from being a wild teenager drinking, smoking, sneaking out to a rigid, by-the-book Southern Baptist practically overnight. Her faith was never about grace or love. From day one, it was transactional. God was a business partner. You follow the rules, he keeps your family safe. And for a while, that actually works. In the early seasons of young Sheldon, Mary is a genuinely complex person. She takes in Mandy McAllister, a pregnant woman thrown out by her own parents, even though it goes against everything her church stands for. She questions her pastor. She has real crises of faith. There's even an episode where Sheldon's explanation of gravity helps her reconnect with the idea of a creator. Not through blind obedience, but through actual curiosity. That Mary? I liked that Mary. She was flawed, but she was trying. But then two things destroy her. First, the emotional affair with Pastor Rob. This is the part that makes me genuinely angry on a rewatch. Mary spends episodes tearing into George for getting too close to Brenda Sparks, the neighbor. She's ruthless about it. But the entire time she's having secret smoke breaks with this young, attractive pastor. She's sharing her deepest feelings with him instead of her husband. She's having romantic dreams about the guy. And when George actually catches her laughing and smoking with Rob outside the church after George drove there to surprise her, feeling guilty about his own behavior, the hypocrisy is suffocating. But in Mary's head, it's totally fine. Because he's a pastor, it's spiritual mentoring. The church setting makes it clean. That's the move she pulls her whole life. If religion is involved, it doesn't count. And this sets up the second thing that breaks her, George's death. He dies suddenly, at work, from a heart attack. No warning, no goodbye. The morning he leaves, everything is normal. He says, "See y'all later," and then he's gone. Mary never gets to resolve anything. She never apologizes for the emotional affair, never acknowledges how she undermined him for years, never gets to tell him she loved him in a way that mattered. That guilt doesn't just sit in her, it eats her alive. And what does she do with all that pain? She buries it under God. But not the compassionate, forgiving version, the punishing version. The version where if she just prays hard enough, follows the rules strictly enough, forces her kids to comply aggressively enough, she can regain control over a universe that just ripped her husband away without permission. The baptism scene is when she crosses the line for good. Weeks after George dies, Mary demands that Sheldon and Missy get baptized immediately. She's crying, she's frantic, she's telling them she can't sleep unless she knows their souls are saved. And here's what makes it even worse, she's a lifelong Southern Baptist. She knows, theologically, that forced baptism is meaningless in her own denomination. Baptists believe in believers' baptism. It has to be voluntary. It has to come from personal faith. But she doesn't care about theology anymore. She needs a ritual. She needs to feel like she's done something to stop the chaos. Sheldon agrees not because he believes, but because he loves his mom and can't stand seeing her suffer. He even wears a wetsuit to avoid germs. Missy refuses and runs out of the church in tears. And Mary takes Sheldon's compliance as proof that her approach works. A genuine act of love from her son gets twisted into divine confirmation that religious extremism produces results. That moment calcified everything. And the saddest part? Meemaw made it worse by accident. She told the kids to just go along with it, assuming Mary's religious intensity was temporary grief that would fade. It never faded, because nobody ever pushed back hard enough. Nobody ever said, "You've gone too far." Meemaw moved in with Dale. Sheldon left for Caltech. Georgie started his own family. Missy pulled away. Mary was left alone in that house in Medford with nobody to challenge her worldview. The church became her only community. God became her only conversation partner. And over years of that isolation, the complicated, empathetic woman from young Sheldon hardened into the cartoon bigot we meet in Big Bang Theory. And the rewriting of George, that's maybe the most disturbing part of all. In Big Bang Theory, Mary tells everyone George was a lazy drunk who cheated on her. She says it constantly, casually, like it's just a fact about her life. But we watched young Sheldon. George wasn't that guy. He was imperfect, sure. He liked his beer. He almost crossed a line with Brenda. But he was also the one who tried to buy Sheldon a computer through honest work. He turned down his dream job in Tulsa because Mary manipulated him into staying. He coached football with genuine passion. He loved his kids in the quiet, steady way that doesn't get praised enough. Mary rewrote his entire history because grieving a good man was too painful. If George was terrible, then losing him doesn't hurt as much. If he was a cheater, then she was the righteous victim all along. She constructed a version of the past that protected her ego and repeated it so many times she started believing it herself. And remember the famous scene from Big Bang Theory where Sheldon says he caught his father cheating? The moment that supposedly explains his triple knock habit. Young Sheldon reveals it was actually George and Mary together. She was wearing a blonde wig and a costume, trying to spice up their relationship. Sheldon didn't recognize his own mother and assumed his dad was with another woman. He never asked, they never discussed it, and Mary never found out what Sheldon thought he saw. So when adult Mary tells people George cheated, she's not lying about something she witnessed. She's repeating a narrative she constructed from guilt, grief, and the desperate need to be the good guy in her own story. And then there's the Sheldon paradox. Her son is an atheist. He openly mocks her religion. His entire career is built on science that contradicts her worldview, and she just lets it go, she forgives everything. She flies across the country to baby him. She sings him "Soft Kitty." She disciplines him with love instead of judgment. But Georgie builds a business empire, and she still calls him stupid. Missy goes through a divorce, and Mary barely shows up emotionally. Other people's religions? She mocks Judaism, insults Hinduism, makes racist comments without blinking. In Big Bang Theory, she calls the crucifix the last Jew who tried to do sit-ups. She asks if Howard's baby will be raised Jewish or normal. She suggests exorcising Raj's third world demons. That's not just ignorance. That's what happens when someone's entire moral framework exists to serve one purpose: keeping the pain out. The only exception she makes is Sheldon, because Sheldon is her last connection to the version of her life that still made sense. Before George died, before the house emptied, before she became the person she swore she'd never be. So saint or hypocrite? Neither, honestly. Mary Cooper is what happens when a deeply traumatized person grabs onto religion like a life raft and refuses to let go, even as it pulls everyone around her underwater. She's a woman who started with real empathy and real faith and let grief turn both into weapons. Every cruel comment in Big Bang Theory, every judgmental remark, every double standard, it's not comedy. It's a scar. And the most tragic part? She had every chance to heal. She just chose the version of God that punishes instead of the one that forgives, and then she became that God for everyone around her.